Today, we're diving into one of the strangest forgotten corners of Dungeons & Dragons lore. Everyone knows about Bahamut's metallic dragons, golds, silvers, bronzes, but what if I was to tell you that there is another family of metallic-like dragons? One that isn't blessed by Bahamut. One that rules through rigid hierarchy instead of compassion. One that fought a civil war so devastating that most of its species simply vanished. These are the Ferrous dragons. Originally numbering 12 distinct species, only 5 are still known to exist. The tyrannical iron dragons, the sadistic chromium dragons, the oppressive cobalt dragons, the relentless tungsten dragons, and the utterly unpredictable nickel dragons. Some of them resemble metallic dragons so closely they've caused decades of confusion among adventurers. Others seem to have disappeared from D&D almost entirely, surviving only in obscure notebooks and the memories of ancient dragons. Today, we are going to uncover everything that remains of this bizarre draconic family. We will go over their biology, their society, the war that shattered their civilization, and the ecology of each surviving species. Hi, my name is Tom, and this is the Ecology of Ferrous Dragons. During my journeys across the multiverse, I have stumbled upon a plethora of oddities as I dug deep into the history of metallic dragons. While by now everyone is well aware of the main 5 species, lovingly made by Bahamut, there are plenty more left in the shadows, which I will slowly go through at a later date. But, to get to the point I'm trying to make, I have stumbled upon an interesting problem during my research. Ferrous dragons. At first, I thought it might be a situation of language barriers. Maybe somebody tried to translate the Elvish word for metallic into common, or something along those lines. However, once I opened the book, I realized that these are completely different types of dragons. Most of them are not even remotely good to begin with. Apparently, Ferrous dragons were a group of 12 metallic-esque species that seemed to originate from the First World, or even at least shortly after the creation of the material plane. If this old scholastic lore is still to be believed, this family was one of the strongest to exist at the time. But, as many things go, this title has faded as millennia passed. In the case of the Ferrous family, it was a civil war that appears to have brought them low. Unlike other groups of true dragons, all Ferrous species shared the exact same culture. Overall, their entire kind seems to follow a strict hierarchy, similar to the ordning of giants. For reference, each species seemed to group together within the populations into gatherings known as clans, much like the silver dragons, with each one comprising 2 to 3 families, alongside solitary individuals within the same territory. Every clan is led by the strongest and eldest of their group, pretty much like any dragon species does. Yet, even further than that, each of the 12 species had a leader. These so-called sovereigns are the apex of their dragon type, showcasing the maximum any specimens could achieve with perfect genetics, health, and training. The strongest of the sovereigns, Gruglotha of the Iron Dragons, was appointed as their leader. The only difference, besides their godlike physique among other dragons, is that they share telepathic connections to every clan leader of their own species. To summarize, the ranking structure of Ferrous dragons followed a totem pole between species, clans within said species, and then between apex individuals that lead their entire kind. Personally, I feel an inn's kitchen or a military parade is less structured than this. Either way, when it comes to the mortality of these dragons, it's a bit of a mixed bag. None of the draconics would be able to get along if it wasn't for this structure. The iron dragons that are at the top need to keep their lessers in check. While they might be neutral, everyone below falls within extremes of good and evil. Despite their massive differences in beliefs, the Ferrous family still has one particular aspect that draws them together: the desire to return the material plane back to the status quo of the First World. You see, this gathering of dragons desires for all of their kindred to rise once more, to return to the times when their civilizations were the zenith of the First World, and of course, when humanoids and other invading creatures never even existed. However, the way in which their dream of conquest and reinvigoration for dragonkind should happen is up to interpretation. While some Ferrous species want to slaughter all life, save their own draconic ilk. Others want to take a more peaceful and composed approach that would see less bloodshed. The cause behind the civil war is still unknown. While it could have merely been disagreements on the uncertain future of their family, differences in beliefs, or trying to overthrow the supreme Iron Dragon, it is all merely speculation. What is known, however, is that these so-called Iron Wars lasted for centuries on end, and had caused 2 whole species to become extinct. The side of Gruglotha had won only due to the treachery of the Nickel Dragons. It is unclear what happened to the rest of their family, as the last records of their existence saw them fleeing into the unknown. But, considering the ferocity of the Iron Wars, there is a chance all of them were hunted down into extinction. That, and well, they refuse to talk about what happened to them either way. As of recent times, the hierarchy of the Ferrous family is now a shadow of its former self. Its modern iteration has only the iron, chromium, cobalt, tungsten and nickel in that particular order. In terms of biology, all the members of this family share a particular trait in common, simply referred to as metal sense. Each dragon is capable of feeling the presence of non-precious metals within their close surroundings. This innate form of detection ranges between 9 and 45 meters, depending on the age of the individual. Anything that comes within this range will immediately alert the dragon to the attacker's position. The simple iron belt or a steel button on a shirt is more than enough to reveal the approach of an enemy. Metals like mithril, adamantium, gold, silver or copper cannot be felt, however, due to them falling into the precious category. Lastly, when it comes to their culture, this family is very opinionated. The chromatics of Tiamat are vehemently hated for several reasons, mostly having to do with their lack of tact and savagery. While the Ferrous dragons might preach about being lawful and more orderly, hence their partial respect of metallics, which is also partial, well, it's a bit complicated because it's a dragon to dragon thing, where some hate them for doing things wrong, while others like them due to following rules and seeking similar goals. I must admit that this group is very contradictory, but hey, at least they like gem dragons, so that's something, right? Since in recent times information on these Ferrous dragon species has become sparse and far apart, I requested my master to give me some time, and maybe even an opportunity or two, to go and travel the realms to see if I could either interview or collect some lost knowledge on these strange dragons. Although admittedly my master was a little bit upset because he wasn't sure if they were going to be part of my metallic studies, I have assured him that this would be time well spent. Starting with the weakest of the Ferrous dragons, the Nickel dragons. They are the runts of their society. Although they might be the smallest and frailest, they more than make up for it with their aggressive nature. Adventurers who dare to think that fighting a Nickel dragon is a good idea often find themselves ambushed and immediately consumed in one bite. Those who do not quickly fall prey to the effects of spewed acidic vapors anyway. While people may certainly try, the lingering range of this breath weapon is around 9 by 6 meters. By the time anyone makes it out, they are already a chunk of mush on the floor. Another inherent ability of these draconics is the creation of rashes and irritation upon the skin of living beings. While plants or elementals might not be afflicted, every creature made of living flesh and bone will break into pustules, welts, and other signs of disease. The agony and itching of these effects are so strong that many cannot even walk or control themselves after but a short period. Many people end up as wrecks on the floor, trying to claw at their own skin just to make the itching stop. As for their behaviour and personality, the only way to truly describe it is unpredictability. For a lack of a better term, it seems like even the dragons themselves have no idea what they will do in any given moment. While a Nickel dragon might harass a caravan to revel in the terror of the people within, it could very well suddenly choose to kill and consume them instead. Plenty of their strategies for both hunting and killing for sport, such as their ambushes and hit and runs, rely on their confusing and contradictory behaviour. Personally, I am rather concerned about the species as a whole. Nickel dragons act in this particular way in every situation, including when it comes to raising their young. As an example, a parent could very well switch from being a loving and caring protector to a cruel and torturous tyrant. Their whims perpetually switch in opposite directions. Besides receiving the dishonor of being the worst parents among dragonkind, they are also the only ones going extinct because of their own claw. As it stands, almost none, if any, of their offspring make it out of the nest. Many wormlings perish due to their parents choosing to spend their time actively hunting to feed them, only to switch at the last second and eat the food themselves. Or the wormling for that matter. This is more than enough proof that something must be wrong with them biologically. If it was a curse or a disease, then it wouldn't be impossible for the whole species to be afflicted. Yet this seems to be a recurrence in every nickel dragon I have met. As ironic as it might sound, this could be a form of nickel poisoning. While they might be immune to acid, they are not resistant to poisons, not only because of their habitats, but also due to their ability to breathe underwater. There is a possibility that their unstable minds are caused by their very own scales contact with the water. In high concentrations, the particular metal they are named after affects people via brain damage and cognitive decline. Memories become fuzzy and hard to recall, while the chemicals that stabilize a person's mood become impaired and unbalanced, forcing a sudden and explosive change in personality. In terms of their natural environment, nickel dragons are only found within marshlands and swamps. Specifically, they build their lairs within humble, shallow caves, where they dump all of their treasure and eggs. These draconics do not even inhabit their lairs, choosing to settle anywhere but there. While they generally consume giant lizards and lesser giants, on occasion a nickel dragon might feel compelled to hunt a local humanoid town, both as entertainment and a source of nutrition. On rarer occasions, if a nickel dragon runs into a black dragon, there is a chance that they might engage in brutal warfare. Since both kinds are immune to acid, they must rely on their fangs and claws to settle their disputes. Aside from stature, a nickel dragon can be distinguished by their squat and muscular bodies. Their general structure, including that of their face and eyes, is rather reminiscent of a crocodilian. In terms of their scale coloration, wormlings and teens start life as a charcoal grey. During their maturation into adulthood, these draconics gain their expected metallic sheen alongside a few patches of white. Those few that manage to live long enough to see themselves become worms change fully into a metallic white. Another two good ways to identify members of this species are to look for their slim, swept-back horns and a rather strong odour of stagnant water. Within a gathering of vile draconics, it is rather confusing as to why the tungsten dragons exist among them at all. By far, they are the only species within the Ferrous family who is not malevolent by nature. Rather, the majority of its population upholds beliefs similar to those of metallics. For many, tungsten dragons are relentless guardians that go out of their way to slaughter any threat they perceive. Any hint of evil results in a brutal series of witch hunts for the source of such foulness. The best way to explain the mentality behind this species is through the term ends justify the means. It does not matter how many innocents lose their homes or how much collateral damage occurs, so long as their actions result in a positive overall outcome. Due to their no-nonsense attitude, they use every resource and tactic within their vast arsenals to triumph over evil. It doesn't matter if some actions might seem cruel or over the top, as long as justice is dispensed. Evil will stop at nothing to propagate itself into the hearts of all living beings, and as such, it is the job of the tungsten dragon to destroy it without mercy. But no matter how ferocious they might be in their crusade against the wicked, these dragons make sure they remain within the boundaries of the law, and that no innocents are harmed. Even if they share many personality traits and philosophical beliefs with metallic dragons, tungstens do not have fond opinions of them. As a species that lives within warmer locales such as deserts and dry steppes, the only other kind of dragon they encounter are blue and brass dragons. While they may love the likes of golds and silvers, with whom they share several ideological beliefs, brass dragons are an antithesis to them. They perceive their entire population as self-absorbed chatterboxes that do nothing besides occasionally bathing under the warm light of the sun and chewing someone's ear off. While it might be arbitrarily true, this is a little uncalled for. However, this does not stop the tungsten dragons from viewing them as unworthy of the title of good dragons, finding their classification not only absurd, but often a little offensive to every other kind of dragon dedicated to fighting against the darkness. Even worse yet is their opinion of blues. While every kind of Ferrous dragon loathes chromatics, it is especially so in this particular case. Evil blue dragons that find themselves close to territories of tungsten clans may watch in horror as they are charged by an entire pack of vigilante dragons who will stop at nothing until the local blue dragon clan is completely obliterated. I want to emphasize that when it comes to the territory of this type of dragon, they are quick to defend themselves against intruders. Often it requires multiple explanations and plenty of examples to prove that you are not an evil creature seeking to attack them, but rather someone on a quest for the betterment of the world. Anyone who fails to convince them, even if they are innocent, will be quickly torn asunder. For these dragons, it is better to be safe than sorry. For anyone unlucky enough not to be believed by a specimen, the first thing they would feel is their breath weapon. In this particular case, it is a concentrated spray of burning hot sand that can reach up to a distance of 21 meters. If being covered in sand was not bad enough, and as we know it gets everywhere, the fact that it is scorching hot should be ample room for panic. No matter how much you might try to force it off, there will always be more trapped within recesses and small holes within your equipment. Another fiery method of dispatching their enemies is through sudden magical combustion. Up to 3 creatures at once, at the choice of the dragon, suddenly combust into flames. With this breed of draconic, it seems that whether you like it or not, you will end up with 3rd-degree burns. And if, by some miracle, you manage to be unharmed, they will create a sandstorm to blind you, and then try to set you on fire again. Lastly, from what I could gather about the culture of their kind, tungsten dragons are the only ones within the Ferrous family that take care of their wormling in a reasonable manner. While other species can and will protect them for the duration of their infancy, tungstens are the only ones to accept them after their growth to full maturity. For them, the children they love and carefully raise should have the option of choosing for themselves whether they want to part ways or remain in their home territory. To identify this member of the species, it's actually quite easy. In terms of notable features, the face of a tungsten dragon is almost insectoid-like, and in addition, the frontal scale plating upon its nostrils or snout region is covered in thicker, spine-like plates. The wings of a tungsten dragon are also massive for its size, often described as closer to a ship's sails, but in my opinion it looks a bit more like an old leathery tarp. At birth, the scales of a wormling are a deep forest green with a number of brown specks. As they age into adulthood, the green scales slowly lose their spots as they become lighter. By the time they are fully matured, the scales change their colour into a lustrous metallic green. Even older individuals that can be classified as elders lose the shine that they painstakingly grew into, with the eldest of their kind returning to a dull green once more. With all that said, I do not particularly understand why these dragons choose not to abandon their Ferrous kind. While taxonomically nothing would change, they would at very least have cousins and other like-minded draconics to work with. Their populations are already at odds with every other part of the hierarchy, so why do they not just switch over? I have asked a couple of tungsten dragons about this issue, and they promptly ignored me. But to be fair to them, they barely harm the environment. One might even say that they are more mindful about their local ecosystems than some druids, so please, if a tungsten dragon is reading this, just switch sides already. As I was studying the horrific personality of a Ferrous cobalt dragon, my writing was suddenly interrupted by another draconic swooping from the sky and starting to fight my host to the death. Since I couldn't do anything about it, I took a good few meters of distance and kind of had to just wait it out. Luckily, nobody perished, but the end result made me even more confused, because as it turns out, there are 2 different species of cobalt dragon, and one of them is part of the metallic group. Raging headache aside, I will begin with the Ferrous family one, and then move on to the other. What in the 9 hells is going on with these cobalt dragons? To begin, Ferrous cobalts are the middle of the species ranking ladder, yet despite their rather lofty position where they can command and boss around large chunks of draconic underlings, nobody likes them. Cobalt dragons as a whole are malevolent to the extreme. They enjoy setting traps for the sake of torturing random travelers and caravans. But they do not do it merely for the sake of causing pain. The primary goal and drive of these ones is to produce unpaid interns. Yes, that's what we'll go with. In a way, all they can think of is how to dominate anything that they see. While they may be commonly spotted underground, and potentially even deep enough to reach the Underdark, most kobolds base themselves within deep forests and jungles. Their lairs mostly take the form of caves, whose entrances are covered in thick vegetation. Even though this might be speculation, I have a feeling that most of the interns they bring back to their homes are used for constructing traps. The only thing known, kobolds refuse to elaborate further, is that they spend all of their spare time building and studying better trapping methods. Currently, deadfalls, falling trees and rock slides are their main go-tos. Another notable feature of these dragons is their hatred for green dragons that generally live in the same region. Since they love their peace and secrecy, it can be quite annoying when you have a nosy acquaintance ruining your ambushes through cunning and manipulation. When it comes to the topic of their breath weapon, it is either a pulse or beam of magnetic force, one that shunts anyone nearby. Large creatures might have a chance and just have their legs swept from under them, but anything smaller is sent flying like a fireball. In the case of using ferrous materials for your armor and weapons, this is particularly super effective. An adventurer can meet the opposite side of a cave wall in about 2 tabaxi monks an hour. While it can be dodged because of its roughly 1 meter width, it still has a range of 30-ish meters. Luckily, nothing in the natural environment is made of pure metal, so most things are reasonably safe, which means that their excessive use of such a breath weapon does not cause much damage to the local environment. They also specifically base themselves within abundant locales where game is everywhere. If anything, they are helping with the excess of certain prey species in various regions. Since ferrous cobalt dragons tend to live in isolation beside the rare permanent mating pairs, they do not particularly have a high calorie requirement. It is a bit weird, however, that they need to have their sovereign tell them to reproduce and have spouses. Anyway, when talking about their wormlings, these dragons are exemplary parents. Up to the age of 25, when their offspring mature, they are known as great parents. The only difference that I vehemently dislike is that after their sons and daughters grow up, they have little time to evacuate the premises. If they do not do this in time, or they choose to return afterwards, even by accident, they will be promptly killed on sight. It is rather weird how they see them as competition after maturity. The appearance of cobalt dragons is quite strange, as their scales do not change in colour or shine throughout their lives. From the moment they hatch until their death, all cobalt dragons display a deep midnight blue, accented by patches of lighter and darker shades across their bodies. The only noticeable change is the size of such patches, which grow as the dragon matures. However, this change is subtle and sometimes nearly imperceptible. In the case of physical features, a ferrous cobalt can be identified through its rat-like thin tail and long, sneering snout filled with sharper than usual canines. And lastly, bright red eyes, similar to those magic helmets that try to make their wearer look broody and mysterious. Moving to their Bahamut-made counterpart, or namesake, I'm not really sure, the metallic kobolds are basically what adventurers would call barbarians. They thrive within icy regions where ice rifts and bellowing cold dominate the environment. From birth, every metallic cobalt dragon lives by a strict code of honor, challenging local villages and settlements to duels. While they might be into conquest and expanding minor domains into bustling empires, they also have a whole make everyone strong so that they might never be hurt again attitude. They absolutely despise feeling weak or being an underling, and they also hate commanding weaklings, so they put everyone to work in terms of excessive muscular training. Do you even lift, bro? They are also probably the reason why so many people in the colder regions look like bricks of flesh rather than people. They do really favour buff races like orcs, ogres, minotaurs and trolls within their armies for that exact reason. Rather than using their breath in combat, metallic kobolds would rather throw claw and fang as they wrestle elk and bears since their youth. When they find themselves unable to fight within their own territory, cobalt dragons, and especially their wormlings, will gather into war groups and attack larger opponents like white dragons. As one might guess, that pretty much causes most of them to be covered in scars and injuries, which they wear as badges of honour. Most of these battles tend to happen on the ground and specifically at night. Having good vision and bad flying abilities essentially causes them to act more like drakes than actual dragons in terms of their movement. Their hordes are mostly a hybrid between physical objects and more abstract concepts. Their actual horde piles have a mix of coinage and gemstones alongside massive stores of baroque armour and weapons. Most of them are taken from fallen champions who fell at the claws of the cobalt dragon. Their more abstract horde is their territory, people and position within the societal ladder. A cobalt who is crowned as a king is higher than one addressed as a chieftain or warlord. Because of their concept of fiefdoms as part of their hordes, they tend to be very territorial and aggressive when protecting them. Many armed individuals who dare trespass instantly turn to ice from the cold vapour they call a breath weapon. I do need to mention that the species is split between plenty of evil and good individuals, so if you were to encounter one, showing strength is the best option. While good cobalt dragons would allow you to pass for bending the knee and respect power, evil ones will kill any cowards or weaklings they come across. Metallic kobolds look vastly different from the likes of their spindly evil cousins of the same name. They are wide, stout and heavily muscular. In the case of their horns, they are closer to those of rams, as they have an excessive front-facing curve. Rather than goring you, they would probably give you a concussion if they hit you with them. Their leathery wing membranes tend to be very light blue, with dark flecks around the lower parts. And lastly, their scales are diamond-shaped and are solid, deep, dark blue. The second most powerful of the Ferrous dragons, the chrome dragons, also referred to as the chromium dragons depending on your level of eccentricity, is by far the most evil of its entire family group. Similar to the likes of black dragons, chromiums only care for a single thing: pain. And lots of it. To them, any creature exists to suffer for their enjoyment. They might rip limbs, freeze you, blind you, or gore you with nothing but glee on their monstrous faces. Yet, they will never kill you. To them, the curiosity of pain comes in the form of how far they can keep going with it, much like a game of cat and mouse. At the very least, I can excuse black dragons because of their inherent nature and compulsion for torture. It is like an innate and inignorable call in the back of their heads, and they at least have the audacity of being on the weaker end of their kind. Chromium dragons, they are the second strongest amongst their kin, and worse yet, they look identical to silver dragons, the protector of the innocent. Talk about dragon fishing. When these dragons hatch, their scales look like tarnished silver. With time, they begin to temper and smooth themselves into a slick metallic silver finish. And only later in life, as elders and worms, do they become fully chrome, having an almost liquid or mirror-like finish on their scales. Where elders fly, it is like seeing a disco ball being thrown into the sky and blinding everyone in the surrounding area. The only way to separate the two species during adulthood is by looking at their faces and frills. A chromium's face is smooth, while a silver's is beak-like and armor-plated. While silvers have huge moth-like frills on the top of their heads and their tails, chromiums have large jutting spikes, beginning from the tip of their nose down to their tail. These Ferrous draconics also have a mane of shiny horns. If that wasn't enough of a difference, You will also find these dragons inhabiting the coldest Arctic regions, choosing to settle in deeper areas of the earth such as caverns and ravines. From what I personally have witnessed, their lairs tend to be masterpieces, much like how other species might spend time carving and decorating their interiors. A notable feature of their lairs is the thin ice flooring. If enough pressure is applied to certain areas, the entire floor can crack and break. And if there is just a deep pit filled with spikes or icicles, that's a choice made by the dragon themselves. It is here I must note that these chrome draconics do not care for their offspring. They make absolutely horrid parents on the best of days. While they are allowed to exist in their territory until their teens, they do not receive any form of care or advice. For all chrome parents' care, the wormlings could fall into the spike traps, and they would just redo the flooring with them still in there. It is absolutely no wonder why most members of this species are as messed up and psychotic as they are, when this is how they raise their young. At least Ferrous kobolds had the respect for their kids until they turned 25. Despite this possibly not being the main reason behind it, silver dragons are their mortal nemesis, while metallics overall act in retribution or in preemptive strikes once their suspicion has been sufficiently piqued. When it comes to chromes, silver dragons will attack them without hesitation. White dragons are also local threats, but the vast disparity in power always sees them getting maimed more often than not. In terms of food, most specimens rely on snow, ice, and water to survive. Somehow, liquid and solidified water has enough nutrition to power their large bodies. Some individuals do feast upon flesh, especially that of humanoids they have recently tortured. However, this is more uncommon. Since they absolutely do not fight fair, the most common way to encounter a specimen is through their appearance from the sky. Normally, an encounter starts with them breathing one of their two elemental attacks. For reference, these creatures have the ability to breathe either a cone of freezing crystal, which will pierce and get stuck into your flesh as they freeze you over, or a line of solid ice. Some individuals have been noted to cough up a solid ice rod that is around 6 meters long. While the freezing cloud expands to an area of 15 meters in length, 12 in width, and around 6 in height, the ice beam has a range of 30 meters. Once their prey is sufficiently wounded from a distance, these dragons will choose to get closer, guaranteeing the painful kill, as well as their meal. If one were to be trapped or find itself in danger, they have a number of innate abilities like turning their body to ice or crystal to protect themselves. Once this is fully cast, they will snap their limb in order to escape. Knowing what they do to other creatures, they probably realize what fate is about to befall them. That, and of course they are extremely greedy, which is just another sin to add to the list, I guess. And lastly, we have arrived at the pinnacle of the Ferrous family, the Iron Dragons. Unlike the minion races they command, this species is rather lax in terms of ideology, choosing to fall somewhere in the neutral middle. In truth, this species is so focused on their purpose of returning dragonkind to its original position that they have not developed much of an identity outside of that purpose. Iron dragons mostly spend their time in human form, most of their kind having the ability to shapeshift at will. Finding themselves within humanoid society, they act as information brokers and hidden agents, putting together plans and ideas as to how to propel themselves further. Since their actions tend to be rather distasteful to most populations, they tend to take a quiet and careful approach. That, and of course, they cannot go on killing everyone if they want information. Hiring a necromancer to cast Speak with the Dead is both expensive and needlessly overcomplicated. While they can eat the body to hide it, it is often not worth the trouble. Those that choose to remain within their dragon form or simply lack the ability to transform tend to live within temperate mountainous or hilly climates. Of course, this puts them at great odds with the other mountain-dwelling draconics, such as red dragons. While irons might think of reds as nothing more than a stain upon their family tree, red dragons fight iron ones as interlopers on their rightful territory. What with both of them being the apex of their families, battles will almost always end with the death of one, as neither side has the will to back down from what is rightfully seen as theirs. Their first and only sovereign and supreme supreme dragon, Gruglothor, supposedly reincarnates every other year, despite originally dying a millennia ago after being attacked by dozens of other dragons. The Sovereign has learned to hijack the bodies of its successors. In a similar form to an insect pupating, new leaders of their race form an iron cocoon. Later in the year, they emerge, having transformed into Gruglothor. The minds and spirits of past apex iron dragons remain within this body. As it stands, the Supreme Dragon is an amalgamation of thousands of prior kings. Since it also vehemently hates red dragons, it has chosen to make a sort of ritual after its reincarnation. It will just go ahead and kill every red it can find as a source of food. His specific lair, somewhere in Ferrous, is mostly red dragon skeletons. Talk about holding a grudge. Didn't even know there were that many red dragons in existence to begin with, if I'm being honest. Either way, in terms of the rest of the species, these draconics tend to decorate their lairs with raw iron ores. This unrefined metal acts both as a very nutritious food source and as an important aspect of their reproduction. I personally have no idea how this works, but I presume it has something to do with magic metal nonsense. Or maybe spouses just love a chunk of iron in the bedroom. Who knows? This particular need of iron dragons actually causes a lot of problems with mining species. Dwarves are one of the main humanoids to feel not only annoyed, but angry at the amount they dig. If the material was melted and hammered into shape, it would probably have been fine. The issue is that there is a solid block of raw iron that does nothing but act as a table for a dragon's mug and newspaper. For most dwarves, this is rather insulting. Be they needing to fight or simply quell an angry dwarf over furniture, iron dragons have two distinct breath weapons for specific events. The first one is a form of sleeping gas, spreading itself roughly for a distance of 15 meters in length, 12 meters in width, and a height of 9 meters. In the right conditions, such as a cramped environment of a city, it is impossible not to be knocked out. If a situation cannot be resolved peacefully or through words, which iron dragons normally prefer rather than violence, they can always defend themselves with a cone of sparks. Essentially, for the few who have seen an artificer in action, imagine a hammer striking a hot piece of metal. This breath cone starts from a width of 1 meter to 9, over a distance of 27 meters. Each spark that comes into contact with a person will not only burn, but also electrocute you. Since there are thousands of sparks, you will probably end up disfigured, and I suggest bringing adequate protection when fighting these dragons. When it comes to their appearance, they are roughly similar in size and power to red dragons. Their scales tend to be a deep black that slowly begins to gloss as the individual grows. Once they enter adulthood, the scales tend to end up with a silver edge or sheen. Apparently, elder worms have scales similar to moonlight reflecting on a rippling pool. Oddly descriptive, but kind of hard to imagine. I would have to guess it would be a very reflective black colour, with splotches of bright silver like rippling stripes, but that's just my interpretation. Now, I would normally end my ecological study here, but as it turns out, there is also a metallic iron dragon. Bahamut really is testing my patience with his humour. What's next? Will he invent 100 more metals just to have me research more metallics? Addendum, I think he actually did. But anyway, the metallic iteration of the Iron Dragon is a rather pitiful draconic. This species thrives no differently than the likes of a white dragon, brutish, greedy, sullen, and with a desire for flesh. This species spends most of its time within dense forested ravines or valleys choked by vines and thorns. Another common habit is broken hills and jagged terrain, where hiding spots are abundant. In these locales, they actively hunt mid-sized prey such as antelopes and boars that they can find within their territory. Since their scales are thick and protective, they generally do not get caught or hurt by traversing these habitats. Sometimes these creatures choose to wait a little longer around roads and known travelling routes. Humanoid caravans and groups of pilgrims make for an easy snack, as they are unsuspecting of the dragon hiding within the nearby bushes. On some occasions, the most evil individuals within these species leave their territory to chase after a village or large group of people as a quick and very large meal. Weak creatures such as halflings, gnomes and kobolds are actually their favourite flesh to consume. While most iron dragons tend to be evil or borderline, good iron dragons spend their life in abstinence from consuming sentient beings, besides goblins of course. Whether they just enjoy the taste or simply have a hatred for them is unknown. It is actually very hard to find the lair of a metallic iron dragon, mostly due to the fact that they have a dedicated barren entrance. Open caverns within their homes tend to be left to the elements. The flooring is rocky, painful and hard to traverse, while most of the volume is filled with trees, vines and shrubbery. Essentially, it is disguised as just another hole in a ravine or hill. The interior den is much more comfortable and homey, looking on par with other draconic nests. Inside, their treasure has to be the most humble. While they might have relics and items, by percentage, almost all of their lair hoards are gold and silver coins. They must just really love the look and feel of them between their claws. Notably, corpses of previous meals are the only way to guarantee you've located the actual entrance. Without prior knowledge or this particular sign, it is impossible to determine whether you are looking at the right spot. I spent 3 hours searching around only to be told by the dragon I was supposed to meet that I was harassing their neighbour. How is it my fault they don't use house numbers down here? I do feel a little bad though, and I hope I didn't wake him from his slumber. Moving to something less awkward, this particular species of iron dragon is solitary. Rather than liking any form of company, including that of a mate, they would rather be left alone to their wealth and food. However, a notable number of simpler dragons are known to be easily tricked into joining other creatures, be it by giving them plenty of food, gold, or flattery. An iron dragon is more than willing to accept any form of bribe, whether they are made to act as champions of an army or guardians of a tribe. Depending on what it is made to do and the amount of things they are given, it can be kept satisfied. Goblins are actually some of their most common bosses. Within goblin culture of several worlds, owning an iron dragon is considered to be a prized possession. Though few goblin factions have the means to perpetually keep such a draconic, as they age, not only their hunger, but also their greed grows. Even if they might be a potent tool, they are still bought through bribery. If a metallic iron dragon is convinced that a person's offerings are inadequate, it will move on without hesitation. Some might even kill you and make you their next meal in the process of switching allegiances. But as long as nothing contests you, they will be as loyal as it gets. As I previously stated, the scales of this type of iron dragon are thick and heavy, at times even described as very coarse as well. Many other dragons have smaller and finer ones compared to this particular species. From birth, every iron dragon of Bahamut has a dark grey scale with a metallic glint, and as they mature into adulthood, toward their elder years, they also tend to develop streaks of rusted coloured scales, mostly around their joints and wings. After researching so many dragons in such a short period of time, I feel as though my brain might explode from all this new information. So with that said, I think I'm going to lie down for a while and prepare my mind for the next ecological study. I will have to write a sternly worded letter to Bahamut though, because clearly he is trying to prank me. I swear he is making more dragon species out of thin air just to make my work harder. I mean, seriously man, enough with the dragons already. Hi, my name is Tom, and I'm the narrator for the channel. First of all, I'd like to say a huge thank you to Alex, our editor, and Axe, our researcher and scriptwriter, without whom the video you just enjoyed would not be possible. This channel is made by humans for humans, which means that we read all the books ourselves, we write and research the scripts ourselves, and we record everything ourselves. There is no AI used at any point during our process, and that's the way we'd like it to stay. If you'd like to help us create more content, please consider liking and subscribing. It really does help out, and the support that you guys have shown to us already has been absolutely insane. So we'd love to continue making videos for you, diving into all sorts of stuff within D&D Ecology, and maybe even a few other RPG topics. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.